Most people will have probably heard of Waco, Texas, due to an incident that occurred in 1993, known as the Waco Siege, in which members of a religious group known as the Branch Davidians, led by David Koresh, engaged in a firefight with the U.S. government. After a 51-day standoff, the Davidian compound, located in Axtell, Texas, some 13 miles east-northeast of Waco, was set ablaze, and many of the remaining Davidians perished. Today, the area where the compound stood is said to be haunted, just one of many haunted locations in the Waco area. There is also a rich history of cryptid, UFO, and alien encounters in Waco that most people will probably have never heard of. In this video, I will go over some of the more interesting reports I've come across. As anyone who follows this channel knows, I'm fascinated by walking tree people reports, and Waco has one of the earliest cases I've ever come across. It happened in the summer of 1954. A man by the name of Jim, no last name was provided, and who was just a boy at the time of the event, had gone on a weekend camping trip with a Boy Scout troop in Cameron Park on the Brazos River in Waco, Texas. He recalled that they had arrived late in the afternoon. They set up their tents near the bank of the river, at a much higher elevation to the river. He estimated that there were about a half-dozen tents in his troop, and probably 3 or 4 other troops set up within shouting distance of them. They gathered up wood and got a fire going. They cooked their supper and soon it got dark. He recalls they sat around the fire telling stories. The fire began to die down after a while as we began to run out of firewood. So off we all went in different directions to find loose dead wood on the ground to stoke our fire. Some of the boys climbed down the riverbank toward the water, and some went up and down the banks each way, high above the water. Me? I noticed a big old dead tree about 25 to 30 feet tall, with low-hanging limbs shining in the moonlight, about 100 yards in front of our camp. Jim claims that he decided to walk over to the tree and break off some of the low-hanging branches. I was comfortable with this lonely task because I could see several campfires around, and could hear muffled voices and laughter from the distant fires. The moon was out, and it was not too dark. I kept my eye on the tree as I continued the long walk from our tent to the tree way out in the middle of the park. Suddenly, as I was about halfway there, I thought I saw the tree move. I felt a chill go down my spine, so I looked down at the ground for a few steps before I ventured to look up again at the old tree. This time when I looked up at the tree, my blood ran ice cold, as I distinctly saw it moving toward me at an incredibly fast pace, though smoothly, as if looking through a zooming lens. I did a fast 180 and ran back to the tent faster than I could normally go. He returned to the fire and was asked why he had returned without any wood. Jim, not wanting to tell them what he saw, asked if they would return with him to the tree, which had now returned to its original place. He told them that he had found an abundance of wood there and needed help carrying it back to the fire. They head off in that direction, with me bringing up the rear. Then about halfway to our destination, I heard one of the boys say, "Hey, did you see that tree move?" Just as we all looked up, it happened again. I heard all the boys yell and holler, "It's coming at us fast." Boy, it was zooming at us. I was the first one to the tent with the rest of them right on my heels. We nervously discussed what we had just witnessed, then I related what I had seen a few minutes earlier. We decided it was time to turn in, after we made sure the tent was tied shut real well. Heck with the fire. We let it go out. Jim claims that the next morning, they arose to find that there was no sign of a tree in that spot. In 1980, there was a bizarre incident involving a cattle rancher who lived near Waco. This incident was referenced in Timothy Good's book, Alien Contact, and appears to be one of the very first cases to suggest a direct link between cattle mutilations and aliens. It was April 1980. A rancher had been alerted to the fact that one of his calves had gone missing. He assumed that it had somehow wandered off his property, and so he set about looking for it. As he made his way up into some wooded area not far from his ranch, he was surprised to see 2 4-foot-tall humanoids standing in a clearing. He described them as having egg-shaped heads, large almond-shaped eyes, and with skin that appeared to be sort of green-tinted. They were also both wearing tight-fitting green outfits. The beings were carrying a calf between them, and as they noticed the witness, they turned their heads in unison to look at him. This frightened the rancher, who quickly left the scene. He returned to the clearing later that day, where he found the remains of a mutilated calf. He assumed that it was the same one he had seen being carried by the beings earlier. Upon inspection, it appeared as though the animal had been drained of blood. 1973 was a busy year for UFO sightings and alien contact cases, as anyone who follows this channel obviously knows. There were 2 prominent alien encounters that took place in Waco that year. It was March 1973. A woman named Tammy, then 24, had just completed her shift. She worked as a waitress at a diner which was located around 30 miles outside of Waco. It was 2 a.m., and she was driving toward the city, back to her small apartment, down a lonely stretch of road. She had only been on the road for about 15 minutes when she began to feel strange. Her ears began to hurt, and all the sounds around her, including the engine of her car, sounded muffled. Everything around her began to take on a sort of dreamlike quality, something ufologists often refer to as the Oz effect. She began to feel lightheaded and dizzy, which quickly turned into a violent form of vertigo, accompanied by acute nausea. Despite feeling seriously ill, Tammy eventually made it back to the safety of her home. Upon returning home, she discovered that nearly 3 hours had passed since she left the diner, a period of time that she simply could not account for. Over the next few nights, Tammy began to experience a series of vivid and disturbing dreams that appeared to fill in at least some of the missing time. In the dream, I would always see 2 small figures coming to my car, and my engine and lights going off. As the beings got ever closer, I could see that both were around 5 feet tall, possessed thin faces and cheeks, and were attired in light blue, one-piece uniforms and tight-fitting caps. I could only sit in the car with a heady mixture of awe and fear as one of the figures opened the driver's side door. The 2 entities then dragged me out of the vehicle and proceeded to carry me by my ankles and wrists to the craft. My next memory was of being stripped of clothing and laid out on a cold, hard table with 5 to 6 similar people or things standing around me. She also recalled that some sort of cold metallic device was placed into her right nostril and removed after a few minutes. A small machine hovered over me like a big eye and made a humming noise that made me feel very sick. Her next recollection was of being dressed and carried back to the car and placed into the passenger seat. The bizarre incident was over and the strange beings were gone. Also in 1973, in late September or early October, the witness could not recall the exact date. A man returning home late one night observed a bright light over Lake Waco. He concluded it was either a helicopter or the planet Venus and brushed it off. 2 nights later, the witness again observed the bright light. This time, however, he decided to go and investigate. As he approached the bridge going over Lake Waco, he could see a craft hovering over the lake just near an area known as Spiegelville Park. After going west over the bridge, He took the next exit, which brought him down into the park. As he drove towards the object, it suddenly turned off its bright light and began to move to the southwest. It crossed in front of him and went over the highway. Unsure of what he was seeing, he decided to follow it. He watched as the object seemed to settle down in a clump of woods just on the other side of the highway. He crossed over the highway and drove by the wooded area. The road curved to the southeast, and he went up about 70 yards past that spot, pulled over, and stopped. He turned off his lights, but left his engine running. He watched in his rearview mirror for a few seconds. He could see the craft rising slowly, and it began to move in his direction. It pulled up to his right just on the other side of the fence, not far from a telephone pole. He estimated that it was no more than 50 feet off the ground at most. It was black in color, triangular in shape, about 30 feet in length, and 20 to 25 feet in width. He could see the cockpit, with a green hue inside, and 3 small heads peering down at him. After about 5 minutes, the craft beamed a green light down that engulfed the witness's VW fastback. His engine died and all electrical devices would not work. He tried restarting the engine, but it was dead. His radio and lights were also dead. At this point he became frightened and quickly locked his doors. He could only sit and watch the object, wondering what would happen next. After some 15 minutes of trying to start his car, the engine finally turned over. He quickly drove away. About 75 yards down the road, he flipped on his lights and did a U-turn. As he passed where the craft was stationed, it made no attempt to follow him, and he could still see it when he got back on the highway. At no time did he hear any sound or see any moving parts on the object. The witness recalled that the weather was clear and visibility was good on the night of his sighting. 3 years later, the witness saw a similar light in the area, but this time he decided not to investigate. There is no indication that the witness experienced any missing time.